good. Doing good. I have to tell everybody that this presentation is being recorded for those who cannot be with us today. So just so that everybody knows, that's on tape. I have to tell everybody you're being recorded. So how's everybody doing? Is everybody busy today?
Busy with everything else. Frankie had to get shots today and everything else, so we've been running around like crazy. Wow, there you go.
Yeah, at least it's not like -2 out, so that's a positive.
Yeah, and I had to take we had to get, because we're doing the basement, I had to get like 4 gallons of paint with her in my arms, and I'm like, this is awful.
Well, we're going to get started here in just a couple minutes, but preemptively, today's all about working with foreclosures. So Dylan and Laura, have you guys ever worked with any type of REO properties before, or short sales?
No.
I did one as the buyer side.
Okay. How was the experience for you?
It was fine. It took a lot longer than normal, and it was kind of weird not having like answers from waiting so long to get a response for our offer and everything.
No, it can be, definitely can be. So we're going to talk about the processes today, kind of what leads up to the foreclosure. So that way you can assist potential clients before they hit that foreclosure stage. And that way you have a better understanding of what happens on the back end and who the sellers are with these foreclosures. And then hopefully give you a little bit of understanding about what the foreclosure listing agent is going through on their end, and a little bit of what title is going through on their end that causes these multitude of delays and hurdles that you have to go through. So, all right, let's jump into it. We're going to get started. I know there's quite a few people that are RSVP that are not here, but they're going to have to join us late. So, navigating foreclosure in Pennsylvania. Let me see if I can get this to cooperate with me, because sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't, but we shall see. All right. Of course, my did you knows, September of 2023, there were 37,679 foreclosures that were filed in the USA. So 37,600 foreclosures. That means that there is going to be a large portion of those foreclosure houses that are going to be coming on the market. Relief programs are available for homeowners forcing foreclosure. We're going to talk about that. And the majority of REO homes are listed with local area realtors. So if you decide that you want to get into REO listings, that's a whole nother training, but it is always possible. I used to do it many years ago. I do not do it anymore, but there's a whole program set up for that. You have to be an REO agent that's registered with an asset management company and have to have certain certifications to be able to take on the majority of those listings. But they do list the majority of them with realtors that hit the market again. Of course, all of you guys know my story. Entered the real estate market in 2007 during the crash, which is why I worked with so many REOs, because that was the bulk of the inventory that we had then. I'm experienced in investment and commercial real estate. The average number of transactions I do in a year is about 200, so on and so forth. You guys know me at this point, but it's there. All right, what you will learn, the foreclosure process, the legal framework, distressed property identification. Don't mind my clerical error there that I just noticed. Client counseling and communication, pre-foreclosure opportunities, the auction dynamic, and short sales. And we're not going to go into anything in huge detail, just kind of the 10,000 foot view so that you know what the foreclosure process is like and what it looks like, so that you have a better understanding of what these homeowners are going through and how you can be of assistance to them. But we'll go ahead and give you kind of an overview on everything, and then, join us again for a follow-up on more in-depth conversations about things like becoming an REO agent and working with short sales, because that's a whole 2-hour training that we could do on short sales alone. But let's get you the framework of what you need to get started. Of course, there's always my quote. Never worry about the numbers, help one person at a time, and always start with the person nearest you. That's from Mother Teresa. So I think it's a great quote. Don't worry about what the numbers are going to look like at the end of the year. Just do right by your clients one at a time. All right. So jumping into it, introductions into foreclosures in PA. We already talked about some of our past experience with foreclosures and whether they were good, bad, or indifferent. Every transaction is a little different, but let's look at what happens when a homeowner is faced with foreclosure. So if they get a foreclosure notice and your client asks you, well, what's foreclosure? I mean, a lot of homeowners, unless you've gone through it or unless you're a realtor, they don't really know. You'd be surprised by how little the consumer will know what a foreclosure is. And it's simply this: it is the action of taking possession of a mortgage property when the mortgager fails to keep their mortgage payment. So the mortgaged property being the house, the mortgager is the buyer or borrower, as we usually call them. And the foreclosure is the legal process in which this happens. So us as agents and just the public in general say, I'm interested in a foreclosure. How many of us have heard that? I'm interested in a foreclosure. The property that is being resold back to the public is not a foreclosure. That's not what they mean. That's not what that means. This is the legal process in which that home is taken back. So a lot of times we use the word foreclosure as slang, and we don't really use it in the right context. Today, we're going to use it in the right context. It is the legal process in which a home is taken off of the current homeowner. All right, so there's a bunch of different foreclosures. If you Google this, like how are properties foreclosed, I can tell you that it varies from state to state, and every state is a little different. So there is judicial foreclosure, and this is the only type of foreclosure that is accepted here in Pennsylvania, and that is the court process foreclosure. It means you can't put a mortgage on a property, fail to pay it, and then the lender just knocks on your door and tells you to get out without warning. So it is a court process foreclosure. Pennsylvania is very particular on how this foreclosure proceeding must be carried out and when and by whom. However, in other states, there's non-judicial foreclosure, which means there is no formal court process is needed. And there's also something called strict foreclosure, which involves a court filing, but basically you've relinquished your rights to the property the minute you didn't make the payment. So they can walk in, file the paperwork, and foreclosure is deemed. For what we're learning about here in Pennsylvania is judicial foreclosure, which is the most common type of foreclosure. It protects both parties, at least in my opinion, the best. There is a set standard of rules, a certain process and timeframes that have to be followed. And we're going to talk about judicial foreclosure here. I want to stop and just have Tiara chime in for just a minute and just kind of give us the outliner of title processes. What is one of the items that you see that happens, or Becky, if you have any insight on this, what are the most common things you find during the title process when it comes to judicial foreclosures? What are the common problems that we find right off the bat?
Yeah, so can you hear me okay? I'm driving in the car, so I want to make sure
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. All right, so a lot of the common issues that we find on foreclosures are failure to have the 3129 notices. So the 3120 is the notice to all of the creditors that are either known or potential creditors. So when we're looking at a title search that involved a judicial foreclosure, we're looking to make sure that all of the right parties received notice under the 3129 Act itself, which they always notice the Department of Revenue, the Inheritance Tax Division, the known creditors, any heirs, any known occupants of the property, things like that. If they happen to miss somebody, that could be a major problem in your foreclosure if notices were not properly served, because then we have this outstanding interest, and that will call for a quiet title action. That's one of the things that we've examined very carefully during the closing for a property that went through a foreclosure action. We're also often just looking at any junior liens to the mortgage that was foreclosed upon. They should divest. However, if they didn't receive notice, then they don't divest in the foreclosure sale. occasionally you'll also see something that was a junior lien that is foreclosed upon, and the senior mortgage will still exist on the record and still need to be paid off. So we have to kind of do a very thorough search when we're doing a foreclosure sale, or finalizing this process. I'm using the wrong terminology because I'm stuck in the slang. But that's what we're looking at. So we want to make sure that we're seeing, was there something filed first that should have foreclosed first? And if they didn't, they are not divested in that sale, so they have to be taken care of. Does that answer the question that you asked?
I think it does. Yeah, I think that's a really great point. For anybody who does not know what a junior debtor is, or a junior mortgage, basically when you file a mortgage against the property, you have a first position debt and you have a second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. Usually it's in the form and in the process in which you file them. So if you take a mortgage out on a property when you buy it, that becomes your senior position or your first mortgage lien. And that person gets paid off first in the event the property gets sold, or if the property gets foreclosed on, or whatever the case may be, that person has primary position over the debt they've given. And then you have junior types of liens and encumbrances on it that were filed after the fact. So those could be literally anything, and they could be lines of credit against the property. It could be other debts that were cross-liened across the property, or if you didn't pay your Capital One bill, they took you to court and liened it against your property, or if you didn't pay your child support, they could lien it against your property. So that's what she means by junior liens. So just liens that are not your first lien. So, and when a foreclosure happens, all parties have to be notified. So that I see that as a common problem time and time again, and a reason for many delays, or a reason that the bank could back out of a potential sale. So it does happen quite a bit. All right, so let's go over the stages of the foreclosure process here, just to, again, give you some background on what these people are going through so you can figure out how to help them. And step number one is the default. And this is the default on payments from the borrower. So this is when somebody stops or fails to make their mortgage payment. So at this point, this is the very initial point where the light bulb goes off at the mortgage company office and they say, something's wrong. We haven't received Mrs. Smith's payment this month. Something must have happened. She always pays on time. And at that point, the lender's likely going to reach out internally to the borrower, either by phone or send a notice online, send something through the mail that says, hey, by the way, did you forget about us? We didn't get your payment this month. So that's step one, is that the borrower defaults on a payment. There are other ways that a bank could come after you and foreclose on the property other than non-payment, but they are very few times does that happen. We're getting into situations where they're calling the note due. And for just this training, we're going to talk about foreclosure based on a homeowner's inability to pay. Okay, so there are exceptions to these steps, but we're going to go over the most common ways. Step two is the notice of default. So this period is when notice has to be delivered to the homeowner, the court system, and any other debtors that says, hey, this person hasn't paid us for X amount of time, and now we are going to be taking the step, which is our legal right, to foreclose on the property and take back the asset. So this is that process that Becky was talking about, where they're notifying the parties that this could be coming and allowing people to come forward, also notifying the borrower, hey, you haven't paid, and if you don't start paying, then you can't keep staying. So that's that process that just notifies everybody, this is the situation, and this is what we're prepared to do. Next, it goes into pre-foreclosure. So you agents, you've seen those out, if you've been on Zillow, Realtor.com, any of these other websites, you'll see pre-foreclosure listings. And I get calls from consumers all the time that says, I want to see this house. It's in pre-foreclosure. Just because a house is in pre-foreclosure on Zillow does not mean it's for sale. In fact, it means quite the opposite. This is a period of time after that default, that notice of default has gone in. Now it becomes public record that these people aren't paying their mortgage. So now it shows up on these sites like realtor.com and Zillow and many other sites. It says, hey, these people are at risk of losing their home. The notice of default has started. So that becomes public record and it goes out. But there are some timeframes and some processes that need to happen in between the notice of the default and the actual foreclosure happening. So this is that span in between. When we're done talking about the steps, we'll go over that specific timeline and what that looks like logically if we're doing it, if we're writing it down on pen and paper, and how quickly or how not quickly that process can happen where the lender gets their home back. Step 4 is when the time processes are up and everybody's been notified, the buyer still hasn't got up to date on their mortgage, the sheriff's sale happens. The sheriff's sale is just one of the requirements that are needed to satisfy the foreclosure, and the sale of the property is liquidated by public or online auction, just depending on how that county is set up. Many times the lenders will purchase the home back, or if the home isn't sold at auction, it will revert back to the lender. So if you've looked at any tax records or past sales where it said it went to sheriff's sale and maybe let's say maybe this $200,000 beautiful home, there's a sheriff's sale and the sheriff's sale says that it sold for $1,600. Did it really sell for $1,600? Because I mean, logically thinking, I mean, I don't know about you, but me, if I was at some kind of auction and they put up on the auction block a $200,000 home and the winning bid was $1,600, I'd be delighted. But that's really not the way it works. So we've talked about auctions in the past and we'll continue talking about them. And Pennsylvania has an array of auctions. So sheriff sales, judicial sales, upset sales, repository sales. And we all know from our past training that sometimes you inherit the liens and the encumbrances on the property, as well as all the title blemishes on the property when you buy a home at auction. Sheriff sale is no different. So when it goes up for sheriff sale, it's not wiping out the prior mortgage. It's not wiping out the fees and any junior mortgages or liens, any sewage or government liens that are on the property. You're basically buying the bundle. They are selling the bundle. So if there's a $200,000 home up for sheriff sale and there's a $180,000 mortgage on it, plus we've got some municipal liens on there that are adding up and maybe some IRS debt on there, you're basically inheriting it all plus the amount of the bid that you're bidding for. So just make sure that your clients know that in advance if they're getting involved with sheriff sales. Having a title search prior to going to sheriff sales is super important. And having that knowledge, you can talk to either one of the title professionals that are on this call. They will help you. We've done that in the past to search that title, both for homeowners who are going into foreclosure and for potential buyers who are looking to buy at the sheriff's sale. Now, if the home doesn't sell at sheriff's sale, it's going to revert back to that lender and it's going to become an REO property. And chances are pretty good that's what's going to happen, especially if there's any type of sizable debt on the property. That's how the lender is going to get that back. Now, how many of you have seen something that a house, we know that that people have moved out on it. You can tell by driving past the house because the grass is 10 foot tall and there's notices all over the door. You know it's coming up. You know that it's a foreclosure. You just know it is. But for whatever reason, the bank doesn't put it online. It's not up for sale. 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 There's a good reason for that. So because of the way that our laws here are in Pennsylvania, after that foreclosure process has concluded, the homeowner has up to 9 months following the sale as a right to redeem the property back from the bank. So they can actually go back to the bank under Pennsylvania state law, pay everything that's due, and get their home back. They can also fight that in court and say we weren't properly notified or we have some type of hardship, something went on. So you have the right of redemption or the right of reciprocity here in Pennsylvania for almost any type of auction sale that happens, whether it's through sheriff's sale or if we're looking at tax claim sales. So we've talked about that before. The time periods are just very different depending on which sale you're going to. So think back to, we talked about the house down the street that your client keeps asking about, and we know it's vacated. It has the asset stickers all over the place. They went in and winterized it. You see them trashing it out, but it's not coming up for sale. This is why, because there are time frames that they have to adhere to before they can transfer that property to somebody else. And if we think about the 9 months in between where this has happened, if the bank has to wait the 9 months, and there's situations where they don't, but again, we're going off of the most common or the worst case scenario, a lot can happen in 9 months. So if you do have a buyer that's looking at buying one of these foreclosed homes, you do want to educate them properly. So a lot can happen in 9 months. Roofs can leak, plumbing can break, the house can get broken into, the termites can wreak havoc. So these are all things that you want to make sure that your buyers who are buying these properties are well aware of. This house has sat empty for a long period of time, and a lot could go wrong, unfortunately. And sometimes the lender who got the property back, a lot of times their hands are tied and they can't do certain things with the home. So just so you have a little bit of an understanding by that, they're not trying to be lazy. They're not trying to hold up the process. They think it's great that you have a buyer, but sometimes they have to do what is necessary under Pennsylvania governing law. All right, step 6. So REO. REO stands for real estate owned property. So real estate owned, REO. REO is a term used for when a lender, bank, or government agency takes ownership of the home after auction sale. And like I said, they can do that by bidding on it, or they can do that just by waiting it out and seeing that there's no successful sale and it reverts back to them. The lender only has full rights to resell the property after the right of redemption has expired, or in some cases has been waived. So again, they cannot put that house up for sale until they have taken that legal process. All right, so here's that foreclosure timeline. And it's easy to talk about this and all the time periods, but really when you spell it out across the board and you're seeing from start to finish how long the foreclosure process takes, I think it really puts it in perspective. So we're going to start days 30 through 60, borrower defaults. So 30 days after the last on-time payment, they don't send a payment in. And the lender is probably going to send a message on day 31, maybe going to start calling, get a little bit more aggressive when 2 payments have gone by. But then once they get to about 3 months past due, the lender's going to get serious at this point. And then they're going to go ahead and serve that notice of default. Now, keep in mind, every internal practice for any large corporation, they're going to have their own internal practices. But this is going to be, again, the most generalized timeline you can find. So around 90 days, that's when the notice of default is going to go out that says, hey, they haven't paid their mortgage for 3 months. We haven't received any communication from them. We've sent them notice after notice after notice. And these people, they just don't care at this point. So we're going to start the process. Hopefully, as a lender, you would say, hopefully this sparks their attention and they start sending some money in, or at least call us. So if they don't hear anything by between days 91 and 120, that's when we consider that being the pre-foreclosure stage. So remember that pre-foreclosure is just all the stuff that's happening in between, which we're not going to get too much in detail because that's really not something you're going to be involved with. But these are all of those notices and court hearings and attorney meetings and all of that stuff that happens in between. The lender is going to reach out to the taxing district. They're going to reach out to the municipal liens. They may have their own internal title company. They're going to hire an attorney to send all kinds of nasty letters. And that's pre-foreclosure. Now on between a date 120 to 30, you can end up getting a foreclosure judgment if everything happens that quickly. I can tell you that in my experience working with clients, it doesn't often happen that quickly. It could, but at the end of the day, the lender doesn't want the house back. The lender wants the borrower to pay or liquidate the property so that they can get paid off. So there's a lot of variance in between. But let's say it goes again, nobody says anything. They don't even know if the borrower is still living in the house. The borrower could have died. They don't really know. They're going to go ahead and continue with the process of getting the foreclosure judgment, which is when a judge would sign off on that and say, yes, you may foreclose against the property. Day 150 to 160, that's when it goes up for auction. We're assuming that the lender takes it back. And between day 151 to 430 is the right of redemption period if they have to wait the entire 9 months. And then day 431 is when the lender has full possession of the asset and resale can begin. I mean, I don't know. I think it's crazy. Over a year to take that back. So this is why some of those homes will sit and it just looks like nobody's doing anything with them. It's not because they don't want to, but unfortunately, in some cases, they just can't. Now, I can tell you that lenders, at least experienced lenders who do a lot of these foreclosure processes, will offer all kinds of incentives to homeowners to either get them caught up or to get them out of the house and have them sign off on some of their rights to shorten this time period, because it's in everybody's best interest to get this done and over with as soon as possible, whichever direction this is going to go. But this is where you hear of things like deed in lieu of foreclosure, which just means that the borrower says, yeah, I can't pay, so I agree not to stay. I'm going to sign my deed over to you, Mr. Lender. I'm going to waive all my extra time periods, and I'm just going to get my stuff and leave quietly. So you could do that. There's another thing that lenders do, which I'm sure you heard of, which is called cash for keys. If the borrower isn't giving up the house themselves and hasn't moved out of the house, sometimes they'll come back to the real estate agent and say, offer them cash for keys, which means I'm going to give you a little bit of cash. You're going to take your stuff. You're going to sign the documents we want you to sign so we can expedite this process. And the money that we give you should be enough to pay your move-in fees to move somewhere else. So, and that's a tactic that sometimes they will use. So has anybody had any of these experiences?
I have not, but I have a question about the timeline.
Yeah.
So I apologize if I missed this. I had to take a phone call. But at what point during this timeline, if someone calls and says, I need you to list my house, I'm in notice of default or pre-foreclosure, at what point can we still help them with that?
We're going to talk about that here in just a little bit. That's a great question.
Okay, cool.
So, all right. So next is who owns all these homes. So the home goes back to the lender. What happens to it then? And I can tell you it's a massively complicated process of who owns the homes, who did own the home, who owns it now, who the original mortgage was through, who the mortgage holder is now. It becomes very complicated and very, very confusing. And a lot of times, even the most expert real estate agents, title professionals can't unravel this ball of yarn that has become the mortgage. So there's primary mortgage markets and there's secondary mortgage markets. There's performing notes and there's non-performing note markets. So there's a whole marketplace out there that just trades money and assets. So this is why you're able to get your client a mortgage with one company only to find out 30 days later that their mortgage company is now somebody else, because there's a whole market behind the scenes where people sell debt from one company to another company to another company. It happens the same way with REOs. There's a whole market in the background where people are basically just shoveling around these foreclosed homes, buying them at a discount, buying them in bulk. It's a whole enterprise. So what I can tell you is that asset managers are responsible for the homes, either whether they're owned locally or nationally. And the asset manager is basically the representation from the company who currently owns or manages the home for that particular home. And usually they cover certain portfolios or maybe certain areas, depending on who that lender is. The asset manager is kind of like a real estate agent, only they represent the bank. So they represent the bank's interest, and all of the information from all the service professionals, like the realtor, the title company, the attorney, the asset preservation team, and anybody else connected to that house, filter through the asset manager and then goes up the ladder to the rest of the professionals in that organization. So the asset manager and the realtor work very closely together to make sure that the asset is protected, that it's safe, and that it is in a state that can be sold off to the general public, therefore recouping the money that they've lost. So these asset management firms, they can range from something very small, like one single asset manager for a credit union, or they can be international secondary market buyers. And what I mean is there are whole organizations set up just to buy REO properties. They will buy bad debt, or they'll buy the bad debt before the foreclosure process has started. So they are able to buy them for much, much less than the balance owed on it. But a lender is able to get the money back that they can very quickly without having to go through that process. And even though they lost a little bit, they're able to conduct business and then start lending that money out to new people who are going to pay their mortgage. So these firms are able to pick up debt at a discount. And then hopefully, if their numbers are correct, they're able to collect the debt and make it performing debt again by working with the homeowners, or foreclose on those properties, fix them up, preserve them if they're not going to fix them up, and then resell them on the market for a profit. The largest asset management company today is BlackRock, and that's no surprise. You've heard of BlackRock before. There's no way you haven't heard of BlackRock. In one way or another, they are huge, huge, huge. And they are followed by Vanguard and Fidelity, both household names. These firms, they can own the asset in full. They can have a partnership on the asset, meaning they're owning it with somebody else. And they can also manage assets for a fee. So you never really know the inner workings behind some of these companies or behind the specific REO. You really don't need to. If you're going to be looking into REO properties and you're listing them, you just need to know that you really need to work closely with the asset manager who is assigned. If you're representing a buyer, you need to be able to work closely with the listing agent to really understand the process, because every REO company, every asset management company is super unique on how they do things. And also keep in mind, they have tens of thousands of properties. So it may not seem like they care about this individual property. They do, but the property as an REO property is basically just a number on a spreadsheet. So there's not going to be that sense of, like Dylan, you had brought up, not knowing a lot, not being able to tell you the age of the furnace, not being able to tell you the age of the hot water tank, not being able to tell you when the roof was, they just don't know. And they really don't have the bandwidth to really find out. And it's legally not in their best interest to find out too. So, all right. So just distressed property identification. How do we find distressed properties before they go into foreclosure? Does anybody have any ideas of things they've done in the past or things they want to do to find distressed homes?
Just driving past and seeing like tall grass or boarded up windows, things like that.
Yeah, that'll tell you if a property is distressed. What about you, Mark? I'm going to call on you.
Mailbox full of bills.
Mailbox full of bills. Yep.
Overflowing on the porch. You know what I mean?
Yep. Nope. I get it. So there's lots of ways you can find distressed properties, the easy of which are the ones that the people have already moved out of. But those are not necessarily the ones that we should be looking for. If you're an REO listing agent, that's great. It's great to find the ones that are already, to the point that are vacant, may give you some kind of indication of what's coming through the company that you represent. But when we're talking about helping homeowners facing foreclosure, how do we know who needs our help and who doesn't? So let's think outside of the box there, because wouldn't it be a great scenario if us as agents could help somebody before they lose their home and really give them the guidance and the options that they need to make a real impact in their life. All right, so how do we find distressed homeowners? We can find them through public records and notices. We can find them through auction notices and publications. We can find them on a lot of websites. And probably your best source is going to be your referrals. So let's look at each one. Public records and notices. I have found that the easiest way to find a distressed homeowner is to go to the county website. The county website is free in most cases to search. And if it's not free, some counties do make you pay a monthly fee, but it's usually minimal. And you can do it right from tax claim. So chances are pretty good that if they're not paying their mortgage, they're also not paying their what?
They're not paying their taxes.
They're not paying their taxes either. If they're not paying their mortgage, they're not paying their taxes. Now, keep in mind that if their taxes are escrowed, that bank is still going to continue to pay those taxes. But you can look on here and see who is distressed that maybe does not have a tax escrow built in from the lender. So check on your county website. So of course, this is going to knock out anybody that has an FHA loan, because you know that those are included in the payment. But there's lots of people out there who have more conventional style financing that pay their own taxes. So look for that tax claim. This is also going to tell you distressed people who maybe don't have a mortgage but can't afford to pay their taxes. That's how we get back into that judicial upset and repository sales that we've talked about before. So you want to go back in there and see who's behind on their taxes, and then you can find out why. Second is auction notices and publications. So the sheriff's sale notice goes out way ahead of the auction, way ahead. It gives everybody ample notice, and that's part of their notice of default. So you can go on to most county websites and pull up sheriff listings. You can pull them out sometimes for months in advance, and that may just be the amount of time you need to get the homeowner into a better position. You can also check newspapers. A lot of times they'll put out notices in the newspaper, telling other creditors to come forward that they're giving that notice of default, and law journals. You can look on law journals. A lot of attorneys will post things there as part of their notices period. Websites. The biggest one of this would be Zillow. Zillow is great for putting people's dirty laundry online. And you know me, I think that Zillow is encroaching on a real estate agent's territory because we give them the information and they sell it right back to us. But the information's already out there, so you might as well get your money's worth out of Zillow. Go on there and check pre-foreclosures in the area. You can do this by searching an area and then filtering the search to pre-foreclosure. And then you can start narrowing down on who owns that house and have those conversations with them. When it says pre-foreclosure, you're going to have no idea where they are in the process. All you're going to know is that they may be open to a conversation on how you can help them out of their financial difficulties. So that's something you may want to try. There's some other websites like RealtyTrack, IRSseizures.com, Realtor.com that's going to have some of this information in there. So again, it's a good place to start when you're looking for people in pre-foreclosure. Now, we've talked again in our marketing training how you can backtrack these people and find them. And going on to that freepeoplesearch.com is a easy, efficient, and free way to find their contact information. That way you're able to reach out to them. Full disclosure, I've said it 100 times, just make sure they're not on the do not call list before you call them. If they are, you're going to have to send them some snail mail to get a hold of them. All right, referrals. Referrals are a great way to find people who need your assistance during this time. Talk to other agents. I'll be the first one to tell you that some agents like a certain type of house or client, and then others really don't have a niche and they don't mind who their client is, where they're at, or the price of their property. So it's really going to be up to which agents you talk to. Talk to those who maybe are a little busier and they don't have the time to dedicate to helping people through their pre-foreclosure process, they may be willing to refer that client over to you and give you a little bit of background, as well as making that initial introduction to them so that the homeowners feel a little bit more confident with you reaching out to them. Attorneys, reach out to the attorneys. I got another spelling error in there. I needed to use spell check before today, but attorneys are a great one. Get your referrals from your attorneys, your tax professionals, and your wealth advisors. Coming up with a standard program or even some kind of standard outline of the services that you offer for people having, financial challenges when it comes to their mortgage is a great way to get those referrals over to you. All right, client counseling. You can be an advocate to help struggling homeowners. So, Dylan, you had asked, how do we know when we can still help, and how do we help them during this foreclosure period? So there's a couple things on here that can help. There are some relief programs that can help during the foreclosure period. We're going to talk about that. You can help them with a traditional sale. You can open up the conversation about a short sale, and we can help them move on, maybe into a rental. So what is HEMAP? So it is the Act 91. It also stands for Homeowners Emergency Mortgage Assistance Program, and it's offered through PHFA. It is a loan program, not a grant. Most people will assume it's a grant. It is not. It is a loan program that can help the homeowner repay a judgment amount on their mortgage up to $60,000. Now, they do have to qualify. Again, this is not a grant. It is a loan. And one of the biggest parts that they have to do is they have to continue making on-time mortgage payments. I have offered this to more than one client in the past, but when you're talking about a client who's already struggling making their minimum monthly payment, and then we're talking about another loan, it doesn't always go over well. So there is an entire fact sheet on PHFA's website. It's on the link there on the screen. If anybody needs it, I'll be happy to email it. But I think the fact sheet is so important when having these conversations with distressed homeowners over who can qualify, what it's going to cover, and some of the things that's going to be expected of them as they go into this program. I think it could be a great arm or something to offer to your clients to let them know that there are programs out there that can help. But I can tell you it's not going to be the best solution for all homeowners, especially ones who just for whatever reason can't make that minimum payment. And keeping an open mind as to why the clients can't pay is also imperative. Lots of things happen. Lots of things happen in life. We have, spouses who unfortunately pass away, are not able to work. Maybe there was some type of catastrophe. If COVID taught us anything, it taught us that a whole nation can be upside down in a matter of a month. So lots of things can happen that contributed to their financial change. So you want to make sure that you're really getting them the information that they need, and then having them talk to the right professionals like an attorney or a tax consultant. Can they still sell their home once they're in foreclosure? Depending on their situation, maybe they can. So you're going to have to ask the following questions in addition to a bunch of other ones, depending on their situation. So where are they in the foreclosure process? We just reviewed this over a year-long process that it takes to get from their first missed payment to when the REO can be resold on the market. Where are they in this process? Are they in the beginning of the process? Or are they at the end of the process? So depending on what day they are of their foreclosure is going to make a huge difference. You're going to want to know what's the payoff amount. They may give you a payoff amount that they think is the payoff amount, but I can tell you that it is super important for you to confirm this information with the lender. The minute they stop paying, they're incurring additional fees, interest, attorney's fees, notices fees, court filing fees. The list is endless. The list is just endless on the amount of fees that they are accumulating over the time period. So it's really, really important to make sure you're getting accurate numbers, because if they're telling you they owe $60,000 as a payoff, it's very possible that that was true before they missed their first payment, but 60,000 can turn into 82,000 in just a matter of months. Is the lender willing to extend the proceedings while the home is on the market? And isn't that a thought? So remember, we talked about how the lender doesn't want the house back. They don't want it. They did not buy the house. They are not going to rent out the house. They don't want to live in the house. Like, they're likely not even in the same state as the house. They don't want the house back. So it is possible, and I personally have done it in the past, where I was able to reach out to the lender and say, listen, I think I can sell this home and reach your payoff of X amount of dollars. Are you willing to do an extension for the next 90 days to allow us to put it on the market? We'll sign the documents that we need to sign. I'll send you all the proof. Like, here's my CMA on the property. Feel free to get it an appraisal if you want. I can give you a few names. Let's see if we can work this out and have this so that we don't have to go through this very costly and very emotional process of foreclosing on this house. So I can tell you that, just depending on who the lender is, this may be a good avenue for your clients. And just to break this up a little bit, does anybody have off the top of their head the average cost to foreclose on a property here in Pennsylvania? You can guess. I'm not going to hold you to it.
50 grand?
What's that, Dylan?
50 grand?
50 grand? That sounds high. It could. It
20?
could under the right circumstances.
Is it about 20?
About 20 grand?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's super close. Super
I'd say
close.
30.
I'm sorry, what was that, April?
30.
30? Okay, I think everybody's close. So when I looked it up, the average foreclosure starts at, not ends at, starts at here in Pennsylvania just shy of $18,000. Just shy of $18,000 is what it's going to cost on average, just as a beginner. If that's if everything goes according to plan, $18,000 to foreclose on a house. So when I tell you that the lender does not want the house and the lender does not want to spend the money to foreclose, I mean it. If there's a will, there's usually a way. And again, this varies from lender to lender. So everybody has their own internal policies. But a lot of times when these properties come back, they've been vacant for a long period of time. The copper has been stripped in some cases. The roof can leak. The family's displaced. It's bad press. It's expensive. So there is just a lot going on that I'm sure everybody would like to avoid. Yeah, April, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, wouldn't it depend upon where that lender is versus where the home is and what they have for connections there, et cetera, and then the different court filing fees, et cetera, and the state government. But I mean, because I just looked it up and they said nationwide is 77,000 with their economic data.
Oh, it definitely can. It definitely can. And there's lots of situations in between. I think you jumped on late too. There's lots of situations in between that we talked about, like that a lender will try in advance just to avoid this whole process. And that's, giving those deed in lieu of foreclosure is sometimes very common. Like, hey, let's both agree to disagree here. You don't want to pay your mortgage. I can't let you live in the house. So let's sign this over and let's all walk away from this with a handshake and a smile type of situation. Sometimes they'll give them cash to move out in an effort to have them, remove some of the processes in between. It's a very drawn out, long process. And the more creditors that are attached to that house, the more expensive it can be. So, and all for naught, the borrowers in the house do have rights. And they have the ability to fight for those rights. So just like any law case, it can be very, very simple, but more often than not, it's super, super complicated. So, but I would open it up with that conversation. If you can get a hold of the lender, open up that conversation and ask for that extension. Now, keep in mind, they're not going to give you a super long extension, but depending on how big or small the bank is, sometimes you can, as a real estate professional, kind of insert yourself and help that homeowner hang on to their home a little bit longer so that you can get it on the market and have a pleasant outcome as much as possible for all parties involved. Is short sale an option? So again, this is going to depend a lot on the lender and the circumstances of the borrower. So short sales are a super long and complicated process. This I can tell you. I'm sure we've all heard the horror stories of short sales. We see them on the market from time to time. Nobody really understands a short sale, it seems. They are very long and they can be very complicated. In my opinion, agents must be specifically trained in short sales to be able to do them. So whether you're buying a short sale or you're a real estate agent who is getting into a short sale situation, you need to be specifically trained for this. One, but for a couple of reasons. One, for your own sanity. Two, to properly represent your clients. And three, to have a successful outcome. I see so many short sales on the market that are done completely wrong. They're done backwards. It's probably been about a year since I've put in an offer on a short sale for a client, but it was listed and I put in the offer, and the offer was not returned signed by the sellers, the actual occupants of the property. And the agent tells me, well, I sent it over to the bank and I'm waiting for the bank to sign. The bank doesn't sign the sales agreement in a short sale. The owner of the property, the rightful owner of the property, signs, and then it's subject to lender approval. So the whole process was on its head. The lender was never going to respond. So it is imperative that you are properly trained and certified in short sales, because everything you know about the offer and acceptance process is completely opposite with a short sale. So you can join us for one of our follow-up trainings for short sales, which we'll have here in a few months. We're going to deep dive into short sales, tell you a lot about it. I do suggest that you take that. And then we're going to talk about short sales a little bit more here in the rest of the slides. So what if it's too late? What if you go through this process, you have the meeting with your client, and you just realize that it's too late to help them? What do you do? What can you do for your client if you find out it's just too late? Do we just say, thanks, but no thanks, nice knowing you, and walk out the door? Or how do we as professionals leave some lasting impact on their lives?
Too late by what? Is there like a lockbox on the front door?
Well, too late in the process. So if we've already gone through and we can't help them on the short sale, it's too late to put it on the market. They don't qualify for any of the loan programs or relief
Then
programs.
we get them a rental. You find them another roof.
Yes, find them another roof. Absolutely. So assist them in finding a rental property. You can guide them as they speak to their family or friends. So if they can't get into a rental, guide them and coach them on how they can open up that conversation to their family and friends. Refer them to local charities. There's so many charities and government organizations that are specifically designed to help people who are being displaced. It's not even funny. Check in the county where this client lives and see what kind of programs they have. I can tell you that here in Lawrence County, they have 1,000 different programs for all kinds of different reasons. So there is no reason why anybody should be without a roof. You may be able to refer them to the government agency that can help. And above all else, listen and care about what they are going through. Even if this client is not going to move into a rental property, say they can't afford it, they're going to move in with family and friends, it doesn't mean that they can't be a positive impact on your business and that you can't be a positive impact on their life. What do I say all the time? Every person you meet should be 2 more referrals for you later on. If you treat somebody with care and compassion and just do what's right by them, even if they're not buying a house from you today or selling a house with you today, they're likely to tell 2 other people how amazing you were and how you were their advocate in their time of need. So you may not see the profits from this immediately, but trust me, they will come back to you at some point. They're just not always going to be clear where they came from. So always just listen and care about what they're going through, even if you can't help them in the moment. All right, let's go over short sales and auctions a little bit, just to give you a little bit of understanding on short sales. A short sale occurs when a homeowner sells their mortgage for or sells their property for less than the outstanding mortgage balance. So if somebody has a $150,000 mortgage payoff and they end up selling the house for $100,000, they are quite literally selling the home short $50,000. So that means that the homeowner has made every effort to sell the home for fair market value, usually with the help of a real estate professional. And the bank understands that the home is now at a loss for whatever reason. Maybe the market changed, maybe they overpurchased, maybe they over leveraged. Maybe there's a situation where the home just isn't in the same condition that it used to be in, but both parties are agreeing this is probably the best suitable outcome, is just to sell the home for what it's worth, and then everybody walks away. So this typically happens when the market value of the property has decreased and the homeowner is unable to cover the remaining loan amount. Short sales can be a viable alternative to foreclosure, benefiting both the homeowner and the lender. So can anybody think of any benefits this would be to the homeowner? We know the benefits of the lender because they don't want to go through foreclosure. They're going to lose that money anyway. You know, we're talking about
Well, it still
$50,000.
shows it's satisfied on their credit.
It still does hurt their credit, but yes, it does show.
But it shows
does show
up better than foreclosure.
Correct. Yes. Yes. And what about some other ways? How else could you sell your clients on the concept of short sales? Because it can be daunting. It can be daunting for people to think about. What's another benefit? I'm going to pick on Laura or Frankie, depending on who's there.
Yeah, it's both of us. I don't know. I have no idea.
All
I was
right.
thinking because at least they're getting some money off instead of losing it either way. I don't know.
Yeah, well, they're not really gaining any type of monetary value, but they are getting, it's showing less on their debt. But did we ever think of it in a way of planning? You can tell them what to expect. So one thing when you're working with people who are at risk of losing their home, they almost don't know what to expect because things can happen slowly or they can happen very quickly and they can feel like they're rolling down a hill, losing control. At least with the short sale,
Yeah,
we've
it
already
gives them more control. Yeah.
We've already negotiated a contract on the property. It's been on the market, so they know they're starting to get to that emotional point where they're like coming to grips that they're no longer going to be in their home anymore. And then we put it into a sales agreement. They know when the start is, when the settlement is. It just gives them a roadmap. And I can tell you, it does amazing things for just their inner peace, if nothing else. So some things you need to consider when working with short sales is education and certification. And we already covered this, you have to be specifically trained in short sales if you're going to have any success in them. But it is crucial for you to invest in your education and certification specific to distressed properties. So I can tell you that they can be hard if you don't understand them. They can be really hard, and it's almost impossible to get them approved if you don't know what you're doing. There's specific forms, and you can find those on your PAR forms. I suggest that you just take a look at those and just read them over, even if you're not using them. Get some of the lingo and the processes down. And like I said, we'll have a whole nother training on short sales. But again, it's not like a traditional sale. So you do have to have the knowledge in place to be able to understand how to communicate with the bank. There are certain forms you're going to have to send in. Like one is authorizing you to have information about the client, things like the notices they've been sent, their mortgage payoff. This is giving you access with the lender to be able to even open up the discussion of sale. And if you don't have that, the lender's not going to answer your call, let alone call you back. So these are all things we need to consider before representing a client with a short sale. Now, one of the positive things about short sale when it comes to real estate agents, this is not positive for homeownership, positive for real estate agents. If you're looking for a niche within the market and you don't want to go the REO route, but you do still want to help distressed homeowners, if that's something that, delights you in your career, there are very few short sale agents. So it's an untapped niche. And we've talked about these before. If you're looking for somewhere to fit in your career and really have a solid base of business, short sales are one of the things that you find very little agents really actively participating in. There's a lot of us who are short sale and foreclosure designated or certified through one program or another program. Most of those agents are working with REOs, so houses that have already been taken back by the lender. But there's not a huge, there are agents out there, but there's not a mass of agents out there that are working with the homeowner to either save their home or help them with a short sale or try to negotiate with the bank to extend any foreclosure proceedings so that you can get that house on the market. And we've also talked about the niche of, again, the tax sale properties as well. So If you're looking into tax sales, a lot of these processes are going to be the same. Effective communication. You have to have clear and transparent communication. That's vital when you're dealing with any type of homeowner that's dealing with any type of hardships. You have to be very empathetic. You have to be very understanding. Just understand that these people are in turmoil. The pricing has to be strategic on a short sale. So you're going to have to take a real clear look and have a real good expectations on what this house is going to sell for. And not only what it's going to have to sell for, you're going to have to back that up. Because when you put in an offer to a lender that says, hey, my buyer or my seller has a buyer and we want to sell it short of what the mortgage is, the lender is going to say, why should we sell it short? Prove to me that this house isn't worth what the mortgage balance is. Tell me why we've got to sell it short. And they're going to want real hard facts. So they're going to want sold comps. They're going to want to know what that market demographic is. And if you need to find this information quickly, again, we just had a training on it. Go to that, go to your RPR reports and start pulling the demographics. You can also get a lot of the demographics on Relist. And the lender may have their own BPO asset report that they may make you fill out. So please carve out some time for that. Do not be surprised if they're asking you for a lot of photos, if they're asking you for a lot of other information from the sellers. They may ask them for things like bank statements, pay stubs, all kinds of stuff, and they will give you a checklist of stuff. It's you as their agent. It's your job to guide them through this and help them collect this data to bring a full packet back to the bank. If the packet is not complete and you have not given the bank everything they have asked for, they're not going to respond to your short sale request. Next, negotiation skills. So this is another difference when it comes to short sales. So usually as an agent, we're negotiating on behalf of the buyer or the seller, right? I represent the seller, so I'm negotiating on behalf of the seller, or I represent the buyer, I'm negotiating on behalf of the buyer, or maybe I'm a dual agent and I'm playing devil's advocate and just telling everybody that, I can't tell you because I represent both. In this situation, you not only have to negotiate with the buyer and other parties, but you're also negotiating with the lender. So it's important to have really great communication and negotiation skills because you have to talk to the lender and plead your case, again, why this home needs to be sold for less than the payoff balance. So you are working as the owner's advocate, the seller's advocate, and talking to not only the potential buyers and the buyer's agents that are coming in, but also the lender and pleading your case on why the lender should let your owners go with a short sale and not come after them legally in any other way. Paperwork proficiency, I touched on this. There is a ton of paperwork with short sales. You will be drowning in paperwork when it comes to short sales. But once you get the hang of it, it actually isn't that bad. Once you start to know the forms, once you start to learn the lingo, it's not that bad. But I can tell you, you do need to be organized and proficient with your paperwork. Because if you miss one signature, if you miss one pay stub, if you miss one bank statement, if you don't do the BPO the way they're telling you to do it, if you miss a comp, if you miss a deadline, they're going to yank that deal and they're not going to feel bad about it because they gave you the opportunity. So you really have to be proficient with your systems and your paperwork. So, all right. I know that was really quick on short sales. I don't want to do a full short sales training. I'd like to keep that for a follow-up because it is we could spend 5 hours talking about short sales in general. But does anybody have any general questions about short sales that maybe I can answer? No? All right, I'm going to call on Becky if you're still there. I know you've been having some connectivity issues. There you are.
Sorry, I hit my ear pod button and it disconnected me entirely.
No, you're fine. You're fine. So do we have any, or is there anything that we should be alerted maybe on the title end when it comes to short sales? Any problems or delays that we may incur from a title perspective?
So short sales, like you said, the bank wants to see an actual settlement statement before they'll agree to the short sale itself. And they want everything on it. So they want water and sewage bills, they want delinquent taxes on there, they want commission, they want everything that they're going to be expecting to come out of those proceeds to be on that settlement statement. So whenever we have a short sale, we actually prep that settlement statement for them, and send it over as part of your negotiation. So like all the fees are on there already. I think the main hiccup is if something comes back with a higher amount owed that we then have to renegotiate, or if there was something undisclosed that comes up later. So it's really in asking the right questions and knowing what they need. And kind of what your seller owes. You know, this is when you get into these short sale situations, there's no longer any time for secrets. So it's asking like, do you owe child support? Do you owe taxes? Like, and those are conversations we can have with them too, because you have more of a personalized relationship and they may not necessarily like want you in their business. But we can help with that, you know, like, all right, what are we looking at here? What all do we need to order so we can prep this and you can negotiate that short sale with them.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody have any other questions in regards to short sales before we move on to auctions? No, Mark Peterson's quiet today. He's usually the lively one.
Christina, is there a height requirement? You know,
If-
how short
if
does
there
a person
was-
have? How short does a person have to be? Like, you know, if under 6 feet, I assume. I'm just kidding. If I didn't,
If
do
there
that,
was a
I
height
was falling
requirement, then
asleep.
I probably would not be able to do them. All right, let's move on to auction properties. So again, in some past trainings, we've talked about representing clients at an auction, and we were talking about tax sale cases then. So let's talk about auction sales in the fact of either sheriff sales or REO auctions. So when an REO comes up on the market, we've talked about how it's gone through that process a little earlier, and you saw that timeline. When it comes to the point where that rate of reciprocity is done, then the bank can do whatever they want to do with the property. They can keep it, they can put it on the market, they can fix it up. And that's becoming way more popular these days. These banks are coming in and fixing the properties up so that they look all nice and neat when a buyer goes to buy them. So that's something in the last probably 15 years that has been catching a lot of momentum, is fixing these houses up, and the lender's almost using them like a flip. But there's lots of things that they can do. I've even worked with a few lenders in the past that would go and fix up the properties and rent them and then sell them off, for to companies big companies and hedge funds that, invest in SFR stock. So there's lots of different things that they can do with them when they own them. Just depends on who they are and what their internal, pro forma looks like. One of the things they can do is they can put them up for auction. I mean, you had to, unless you've been living under a rock lately, and I don't think any of you have, we've all seen an auction website, whether it's for personal property or vehicles or real estate or anything. And if you're a real estate agent, you've likely seen auction.com or Hubzu or any of these other ones that are auction style properties. So REOs a lot of times do get listed at some time during the process at an auction website, and sometimes they get cross-listed on the MLS. Now, this can happen before they actually get passed down to a real estate agent, or it could happen if the house is on the market, the real estate agent has it listed, and they're really not getting any traction. It's all really a strategic planning event to get the most they can for the property. So if we're talking about sheriff sales or online sales or anything in between that has to do with real estate sales, you can be an advocate for your buyer client to assist them through the auction process and still collect your commission. So auction properties come in various forms, from foreclosure to distressed homes to luxury estates. So auctions are not just limited to foreclosed homes, not just to the foreclosure process with a sheriff sale, but anybody can auction off their home. Farms are a good example of that. Estate sales are another good example of that. Real estate agents that are well-versed in this niche market can help clients identify properties that align with their goals and preferences. They can navigate the intricacies of auction dynamics, ensuring that their clients are well informed about the potential risks and rewards. So let's look at a little bit about auction properties. The first thing that is going to be the very first step in which you're going to help your client with an auction property is research and due diligence. And we've talked about auction scenarios a lot in the last quarter. You really need to spend that initial time guiding your client through their due diligence period. So we talked about looking for any lienable mortgages, encumbrances. We want to look at back taxes. We want to look at any open insurance claims that might be against the property. We also talked about non-forgivable encumbrance as well. We're talking about IRS tax liens, child support, adult probation, that kind of stuff. So there is things, even if the title has been quote unquote wiped free and clear, which we all know free and clear never means free and clear. And Tiara and Becky could tell you that here on this call. Free and clear never means free and clear. You do have to look out for these certain things. So it will be up to you to guide your client through that due diligence process and really looking, okay, what's all the debt on the property? These are the title professionals you can talk to that can help answer those questions. What's the tax liability on this? Is there any open court cases that are currently attached to the property? Is there anything that's going on with the property that's about to be auctioned off that would prevent me from using it for its highest and best use or for the client's desired use? So those are some things you want to look at. An example of that would be if you had a property that has an unrecorded easement going through it. So it's got a big driveway coming up from the street that goes through another parcel. Has that been recorded? Is it not recorded? Is it shared? Who maintains it? When this property is purchased at auction, is your client going to be able to utilize it? So these are some things you want to consider and talk your client through during their due diligence period. Budgeting and financing guidance. So one of the critical roles of an agent in helping clients establish a realistic budget for the auction. All right. Who has ever bid on anything on eBay? I can't be so old that I'm the only one who remembers bidding on eBay, right? Dylan, don't answer that. Mark, have you ever bid on eBay?
What do you think?
I mean, I think that's a yes from all of us.
Thank you for
But
shopping at Giant Eagle.
a silent yes.
except for Dylan. So one thing that I remember, I'm on eBay when this was, when it was a big thing years and years ago. And I'd be like, okay, I'm only going to bid $10, right? I'm only going to bid $10. And then the bid raised above $10. And then I'm like, well, I'm going to bid $11. I'm going to bid $12. Like, forget it. This other bidder here in California or wherever she is not outbidding me. Before I know it, I spent $50 on something I could have bought for $15 in the store because I got wrapped up in the moment. So this is something you're really going to want to talk to your clients about is their budgeting guidance. They're going to have to set a realistic budget for this property by utilizing all the information that you two gathered before you got to the auction and really make sure that they stay on budget. So they're going to want to know not only what they should be paying or what the property may likely cost when they buy it, but you also want to think of the future too. What's it going to cost them later? Are they going to be able to refinance it? How much work is it going to need? I mean, you really want to put all of these dollar signs in perspective. Strategic bidding. Successful auction property purchases often hinge on strategic bidding. So we were just talking about getting to your budget and staying there. So you need to understand the art of bidding, when to bid aggressively, when to wait, and how to secure the best possible deal for your clients. So you don't always want to seem too eager. And I love going to the auctions because it's a great, adrenaline rush when you're there. Sometimes they can be super boring. Sometimes they can be really exciting, especially if you have lots of money to spend. But you don't always want to seem too eager. So you have to know when to be aggressive and walk in like you own the place, like this is my house, get out of my way. I don't care what you're bidding. I'm taking it. So you might as well just head for the door now. And you also need to know when to just kind of sit back and let it unfold and then come in at the last minute and throw everybody off guard. So there is an art to it. I cannot tell you that I have that art down pat. Sometimes I just wing it, but the more you do it, the better you get at it. Navigating legalities and documentation. So there is a lot of legalities when it comes to auction properties, just depending on what the history was and how they got there. Again, going back to all the different types of auctions that we see over the time, one of the biggest things that can happen can be wrapped up into title. So this is the point where I really like to give Becky the full floor just to give you the beginner's insight on some of the legalities on the title end that can really happen, that could set any of your deals that you're looking at in the foreclosure and auction world kind of into a tailspin. So I'll bring it over to you, Becky.
So what kind of paperwork are we referring to here? I'm sorry, I looked at another screen, half listening. I apologize.
That's okay. Just a general overview on what type of title processes or what problems you can see along the way when we're talking about any type of foreclosure, auction, property, short sale, just the basic processes and some problems you may see that may cause some delays in the process.
Okay. So the main causes for delay that we see, I mean, there's a lot of different things that can go kind of sideways with these transactions. A lot of times the utilities are not on at the property. So when we're asking for dye test, occupancy, that kind of thing, it's pretty hard to do a dye test if there's no water. So you may have to either have the water turned on in the buyer's name, or in some cases, you'll have to get what's literally called a water buffalo out there to run water into the property so that you can do a dye test. And those responsibilities often fall on the buyer. Some of the paperwork, there tends to be a very slow moving process when you're making an offer on an REO, or you're doing an auction sale. The seller may take quite some time to respond to your offer and actually sign it so that you can open the order. So building some extra time in there so that you can get everything accepted is something that we see a lot of the time, because oftentimes they won't extend, or they're not able to be reached to extend that contract for you. As far as auctions go, they tend to not be very responsive. The auction house, as far as like getting information out of them and that kind of thing. So really just kind of accurate and good contact information giving to the closing company with who we're supposed to talk to, and who it is you've been working with, that, you know, anything that you could help us with that will help your transaction move forward. Legal documentation speaking, there's often a lot of REO properties that add in some kind of verbiage that if you are making an offer on an REO property, the seller's bank can issue a title insurance policy to your buyer. Typically, they'll offer that for free or less cost. That process is not always great. A lot of times those companies work for the seller. And we have seen in the past that on the owner's policy of title insurance, they actually make the foreclosure or the short sale or the sheriff's sale, whatever it is, an exception to the owner's policy, meaning that it doesn't have any coverage for your buyer if something was actually wrong with that sale. So be mindful of that when you're looking at that paperwork. And Christina's camera came back on. So did you want to add to that?
Oh, sorry, I noticed
muted.
I bumped it when I bumped the mute.
Oh, okay. Did you have anything to add to that?
No, I'm just listening here. I think these are all really great points.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, certainly some people do accept the policy because, you know, who doesn't want something for free? But it often can be a headache down the road when they go to sell the property and now there's a problem and there's nobody really to fix it because the big bank, their title people are just churning them out. They're not an actual person that you can reach easily to fix the problem when it comes time to sell. Or they took that exception and now there's no coverage for it. So your buyer's kind of SOL. Let me think, kind of off the cuff, other things that we see. Missing addendums, watch out where your hand money is supposed to be and make sure that you deliver it on time to the right place. I'm trying to think, I have
a question, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So earlier we talked about quiet action of title. Can you explain that briefly for those who may have never gone through a quiet action?
Yeah, so quiet title action is a legal process to essentially quiet somebody's interest in the property. So you make it go away. It's a court proceeding that involves notices again. So all these processes involve lots of legal notices that, hey, we're going to remove your interest in the property. It has to be published in a legal journal. And then there's a waiting period again where these people can come forward and say, like, no, I am still owed that money, or it goes away. So, hello. Sorry, Patrick just walked in.
No,
Hey, do you
that's
want to
okay.
talk about quiet title? No. Okay.
Oh, come on, Patrick.
I know.
Yeah, and if you are in any type of situation, we've talked about this at the judicial and upset sales. A lot of times you're buying those without a title policy, and again, with those judicial sales, they say, "Well, the title's free and clear." It's not. It's not. It may be free. It may be free of risk of somebody coming back to you and saying, "Hey, Jane Doe put a mortgage on this property. Now we're going to come and get it from you as a person, not as the owner of the house, but just as a person." It may stop that from happening, but a lot of times that mortgage still lingers on the title, causing a title cloud. So we do have to go through the processes of quieting that title, which is basically just going back to a judge, where the judge, after a period of time and certain things have happened, the judge can say, yes, all parties were notified. Again, nobody responded, so I'm wiping this off the title, and then it satisfies the cloud. But it can be a very long process. That typically, in my experience, takes anywhere from 6 months to a year to have that done, and done properly. If we are unable to get signatures ahead of time from the original interested parties, sometimes you can circumvent the process and cut out time just by tracking people down, having them sign. But if they lost the property once, they usually don't respond when you're like, hey, by the way, you may have interest in this property and I need you to sign saying you don't. A lot of people are like, no, go away. So usually you have to go through that process. But thank you, Becky, for explaining that. I appreciate it. All right, so let's go over some additional training. We talked about getting certified in short sales. I am SFR certified. That's how I got into short sales and foreclosures back in the day. Again, I don't do them anymore. I'm doing wonderful things like this and talking to all of you and managing an office here. But it really helped boost my career in a time where the market was in turmoil. And even though we're not back into 2007 when I was doing these things, the market has changed a lot in the last couple of years. And I think that a lot of agents are really looking to carve out their place as a unique individual within the marketplace. And if you're thinking about helping homeowners with their short sales, or even doing REOs, or just having that kind of in your bag of arsenal in case you need it, it is a very short class that you can take. I was able to take it in a week. It is not very expensive. It's a couple $100. The SFR designation lasts forever. I still have mine. And you get access to a really great website that has a lot of information in it and a community of others who have it. So this is offered by NAR. You can go onto their website to check it out. But I do highly, highly, highly suggest, before you get into any type of short sale situation, that you become short sale certified. I've got a lot of designations. I can't talk today. Designations and certifications for all kinds of different stuff. Some of them were really, really valuable information to me, and others were kind of meh, not so much. But one thing I can say is this was a really powerful program for me, and it really gave me the whole view of really what goes on behind the scenes and how I can help make these short sales be successful. All right, so that's all I have for you guys today. Of course, like we always do, I'm going to open it up for any questions, any suggestions, any comments, or even if you want to tell me just how wonderful your day is going. So go ahead, fire away.
I have a question.
Absolutely.
This is more for the title lady, wherever she went. Is that Becky?
Yep, that's Becky. She's on here.
I'm here.
Okay. Sorry. Trying to put money in the ATM here. Sorry, you guys. So there was a big conversation on one of our Facebook groups, like Pittsburgh Real Estate Investing or something like that, where there was the question of, how do you go about the foreclosure process? And when you're bidding on one online, is that including the back owed fees, et cetera, and any other liens that could be with that property? Which the answer is no, it doesn't include that. But should somebody do title work prior to putting an offer in on a bid online?
Yeah, I would absolutely.
How long would that take? How long does that
It
take,
depends.
Becky, typically?
It depends. So the average title search takes about a week to be completed. It depends a lot on the county in which you're in and how bad the situation is on the property and what type of sale it is. So if we're in like a tax sale situation and we've been exposed to foreclosure and we've been exposed to all of these different things, there's a lot more documentation that has to be gathered. Depending on what kind of auction you're looking at, a lot of times the tax sale process, the files are not immediately available to be kind of snagged at the courthouse, and they are rather sizable. So those can take some time to obtain any information on. In general, a week to 10 days to obtain everything that would give you at least a ballpark is generally what we'd like to see, to give the searcher enough time to do kind of a thorough search to give you a more informed opinion. Now, some counties do have information available online that's easily searchable. Like the prothonotary is the main office that we would be looking for with that kind of thing. And some counties are easier than others for us to do kind of a manual search and see what's there. So Allegheny is very easy to search, but they're also not a tax claim county. So their tax sales are totally different than all the other counties are. So the answer is it depends, but generally 7 to 10 days to do a good thorough search. Can they be done faster? Yes, in some circumstances they can.
All right. Any other questions? No, everybody's quiet today. I must have been either really thorough or everybody is going to sleep. I'm not sure. So before we jump off here, I just want to take a moment and thank Tiara and Becky for coming on and sponsoring this training program for you and answering all the questions that we have and allowing me to put them totally on the spot, even though Patrick would not chime in. So you tell him I'm giving him hell here on this call. I'll be sure to send him the recording so he hears it. If you're looking for any title needs, of course, reach out to Hammonds & Co. Their website is here, and they will definitely help you out. If you have any questions afterwards, too, feel free to shoot them an email and ask. They're always a wealth of knowledge. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, ladies. All right. Well, of course, reach out to me if you need anything. If you think of any questions after the fact, I am always here and I'm always happy to help. And have an awesome rest of your day, guys.
You too.
Thanks
Thank you
for
very
having
much.
us.
Bye-bye.